and we are now streaming live.
Thank you. We'll start our September 23, 5:30 Committee of the Whole meeting pursuant to recently adopted amendments to the Illinois Open Meetings Act included in Public Act 101-0640. Public bodies may, in certain circumstances, hold entirely virtual public meetings without a quorum physically present in any one location. Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2021-23 has extended this provision through October 16th, 2021. As village president, I have made the determination that it is not practical nor prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting of the Village Board Committee of the Whole is being conducted virtually with members of the board and staff participating through the Zoom webinar platform. Village Manager Phil Corrali is in the Village Hall Council chambers in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. And with that, I'd like to call the roll.
Trustee Hallwax.
Here.
Trustee Listener. Trustee Mulvaney.
Here.
Trustee Underdonk.
Here.
Trustee Rubin.
Here.
Trustee Vree.
Here.
We have a quorum.
As noted, today's Committee of the Whole meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting via Zoom webinar software and is being audio recorded and simulcast on the village's Facebook page. A quorum of members of the board are present via remote access. As required by law, I will ask for a roll call rather than voice votes on any agenda item requiring a vote. Second item is public comment. In accordance with the supplemental rule the board approved on April 16th, 2020, here's how public comment will be taken at this meeting. The email address and telephone number designated for public comment for this meeting were published with the meeting agenda. At this time, I'd ask Assistant to the Village Manager, Jordan Lester, to read the public comments received on non-agenda items that were submitted prior to the meeting. Public comments on agenda items, if any, will be read when we reach that item on the agenda. And Jordan, go ahead.
Thank you, President Rowan. We received one public comment tonight, and it is a non-agenda item. And the public comment we received is from resident Jay Schmiel, and Jay's comment is as follows. At the August Committee of the Whole meeting, several references were made to the large number of parking citations that are being issued in downtown Glencoe. No specific totals were provided. However, in one public phone comment, the caller reported being issued 7 tickets in the previous 2 months. In addition, the formal slide presentation stated that 18% of total parking citations in 2021 have been issued to B permit holders, and Jordan Lester remarked that this was not an insignificant amount. If a mere 18% is not insignificant, then the full total must be quite substantial. In contrast, I have been informed by Public Safety Director Lewandowski that only very rarely are citations issued to bicyclists who violate Illinois state traffic laws or Glencoe Village ordinances. Have any of the trustees had the opportunity to observe the heavy bicycle traffic on Sheridan Road, particularly on the weekends? On one weekend in June, I spent 60 minutes observing the intersection of Park and Sheridan, 30 minutes on a Saturday morning and 30 minutes on Sunday morning. During that hour, I saw 35 bicycles proceed through the intersection while their traffic light was red in violation of Illinois law and 17 violations of the Glencoe ordinance to ride single file. I also witnessed a near collision at that intersection. A car was proceeding eastbound on Park approaching the Sheridan intersection with a green light and had to swerve and brake sharply to miss a bicycle going northbound on Sheridan through a red light. At the last Committee of the Whole meeting, President Rowan, while discussing public safety, remarked that it is at the top of what we are supposed to be doing here. When was the last time the trustees discussed which Illinois traffic laws should be enforced and which should not, as well as which Glencoe vehicle ordinances should be enforced and which should not? Do the trustees give any guidance to the Public Safety Department on these matters? Certainly, there is a limit to the amount of enforcement public safety can do. However, shouldn't moving violations have a higher priority than parking tickets? Respectfully submitted, Jay Schmiel. President Rowan, that was all we received for public comment tonight.
Thank you, Jordan. If a member of the public would like to submit a public comment during the meeting, please email your comment to glencoemeeting@villageofglencoe.org. Comments submitted during the meeting may be read at the end of the meeting, but I'll remind everyone, written comments should be limited to 400 words. That's the second item. The third item is a presentation by the Historic Preservation Commission regarding historic preservation in the village of Glencoe. And at this time, I would ask the chair of our Historic Preservation Commission, Peter Van Vechten, and assistant to the village manager, Jordan Lester, to present. Take it away.
Thank you. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Always a good thing.
And it's now in presenter mode, Peter.
Very good. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and present to you. It's been nearly 3.5 years since this commission was in front of the board, so it's high time. There have been a lot of changes, both to the commission as well as the village board. So this is kind of starting again in terms of communications. So with that, I think it'd be appropriate to do a brief introduction of who we are. My name is Peter Van Vechten. We moved to Glencoe in 2000. I am an architect, a past president of the Glencoe Historical Society, a member of this commission since 2008, and have been the chair for the last 2 years. Dudley?
Okay, well, you folks know me. Of course, Dudley Underdonk. I'm a newly elected trustee, also served as a past president of the Park District. I'm an 18-year resident of Glencoe. I have a 40-year career in urban planning and municipal management, and worked in such diverse communities as Oak Park, Illinois, with a very strong historic preservation program, but also historic preservation programs in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Rancho Palos Verdes, California. Thank you.
Erica?
Real quick, Peter, I'm looking through the folks attending. Erica, if you're in our audience, I don't see your name. So if you want to rename yourself as your name, if you're here, I will promote you to panelist. But Peter, I don't see her just yet.
Okay, let's move on to Mitch.
Great. Hi, all. I'm Mitch Carroll. I've been on the board for the commission for about 2 or 3 years. I've been living in Glencoe for about 9 years, and I'm a land use and zoning attorney with significant work in the city of Chicago.
Diane?
Hi, I'm Diane Schwarzbach. I moved to Glencoe in 1970, been in the same house ever since. I am a realtor in Glencoe, have been for about 40 years. And because of that, I often wear 2 hats on this commission because my job is to do what the seller wants or the buyer wants. And it is often conflicting with my thoughts on preservation.
And Jordan?
Well, thank you for introducing me, Peter. The trustees and President Rowan, hopefully you know who I am by now. I've been our staff liaison to our Historic Preservation Commission from since 2017. It's been a pleasure working with these folks, and especially over the past year or so when they've really worked on this. So thank you, Peter.
Jordan, can I just add also that I've been on the commission since 2008.
Yes, you have.
Thank you, Jordan.
Village trustees, you can see there's a broad array of expertise and knowledge on this commission. And tonight, this is part 1 of a 2-part discussion. We hope to have 2 parts. Tonight, we'll be talking about the current state of preservation in the village and the continued loss of honorary landmarks and significant houses. The next meeting would then be to discuss Preservation Commission recommendations, particular recommendations. So we have about a 15 to 18-minute presentation. And I'd like to start out at a high level and talk about values. What do you value about living in Glencoe? Is it the size of the community, the proximity of the lake, the wonderful schools, libraries, library, the proximity to our government, the access that we enjoy, the walkability of our streets, and certainly the architecture plays a big role here. But the minute you talk about values, you also need to talk about preservation. Why is preservation important when we think about this? It's because it installs pride in our sense of belonging in this community. It promotes sustainability. It creates continuity through time, and it preserves the beauty that we have all around us. Preservation helps to define our unique sense of place that we enjoy here by retaining what's significant, helping to tell the story of why Glencoe is different than other municipalities. It helps to manage change. It provides a positive economic impact. And the bottom line, quite frankly, preservation affects our quality of life. The recent community survey, in fact, agrees with that. It was rated, the maintenance of unique architectural character was rated number 6 at an importance and satisfaction ranking for those issues that deal with the look, feel, and maintenance in the village. In fact, 60% of the respondents of that survey ranked historic preservation a high or very high priority. Glencoe has an array of fantastic designs by very, very prominent and famous architects. From a house designed by William Boyington, who was the architect of Chicago's Water Tower on Michigan Avenue, to Bertrand Goldberg, the architect of Marina City, and on all the way to Minoru Yamasaki, who's perhaps most well known for the architect of the World Trade Center. Looking at all these images, many of which I'm sure are quite familiar, all of these are very important pieces of architecture in the village, yet none of these are landmarks, but we consider them very important. A little background, the commission was founded in 1990, and at that point had 2 classifications, a certified landmark and a designated landmark. The ordinance was updated in 2013, more than just a label change to certified and honorary. There was a fundamental change that in order to apply for a property tax freeze from the state of Illinois, the property needed to be a certified landmark. Prior to that time, in 1990 up till 2013, either a certified or a designated landmark could apply. The first chapter in the ordinance is kind of as an overall good descriptor. The purpose is to promote historic and architectural preservation in the village by seeking to protect, enhance, and perpetuate those historic structures, buildings, objects, and sites that are valued by the village and its residents and are significant to the village's archaeology, history, culture, and architecture. Since 1990, 114 properties have been landmarked. Of that, 105 were residential properties. And since 1990, sadly, 19 properties have been demolished on about average of 1 a year. How do we judge if a property should be a landmark? The ordinance lays out 3 categories of considerations: general, architectural significance, and historic significance. Under each of those categories, there are 7 or 8 individual items that are used to judge. All of this was based on the National Register of Historic Places criteria. The current landmark designation differences: the certified properties, a commissioner or an owner can nominate, but the owner's concurrence is required for a landmark property. There is an option to apply for the Illinois property tax freeze. And there's a mandatory review for any exterior modifications. A certified landmark demolition request can be denied through a certificate of appropriateness process. On the other hand, the honorary landmark properties can be nominated by any commissioner or an owner, but the owner's concurrence is not required. Only an advisory review of proposed renovations and additions are called for, and in fact, the owner's presence is not required. There is a 180-day delay for demolition permit issuance, and frankly, demolitions cannot be stopped once they've been applied for. This chart shows over time the number of landmarks that have been made and lost in the village. And you can see on the left side, in the 1990s, there were a lot of properties landmarked. But over time, the number by year has gradually diminished down to about 1 a year. On the other side of the coin, demolitions tend to run with the economy. So for example, in the downturn of 2008 and 9, you can see where things dropped off quickly. But today things are picking back up again. On the village's website, there's a GIS story map that indicates the location of all of the landmark properties in the village. And you can see that they're distributed across the village. There's not a concentration in one given area. I mentioned earlier that there's a number of properties that are not landmarked, but are certainly quite important. We call those historically significant properties. And those those would meet the ordinance criteria to become a landmark if they so choose. These properties were identified through a number of architectural surveys, first in 1985, and then later updated more recently in 2015 through 18. They were conducted by architectural historians, architects, and commissioners. The historic significant properties are also on the story map on the village website. And you can see geographically, they are also spread across the village. Now, currently, there are 9 residential certified landmarks, 77 honorary landmarks, and 224 historically significant properties. That totals 310 total residential landmarks and significant properties, which equates to about 10% of the total of the village. So what we're talking about here is not every single house in the village. It's roughly 10%. Now, when you start to look and compare across the North Shore, Glencoe has the second fewest certified landmarks, and both by quantity and by percentage of the total. So Glencoe has about 3,165 houses, plus minus. And the 11 certified landmarks are 0.03% of that total. And you can see the only one that's fewer is Winnetka. Now, over the last 20 years, Glencoe has had the highest rate by percentage of demolition and new construction on the North Shore. You can see on this little more detail, Glencoe over the last 20 years has had about 579 new homes, and that equates to about 18.29% of the total, which leads all the municipalities on the North Shore. Well, many of you already know this. Demolition does not promote sustainability. If you took the 22 demolitions just from last year, the amount that goes to landfills would equal about 15.5 1,560 cubic yards. What does that mean? That would be Soldier Field about 1 foot high. All of that goes into landfill just last year. If you look back to 1990, that amount would equate to a volume of about 32 foot high across Soldier Field. "25% of the total homes in the village have been replaced since 1990. 1/4 of the housing stock. Now, for clarity, what I'm talking about here are single-family detached houses, not apartments or townhomes, but just the individual houses. What does that mean? If you were to take a look at Skokie Heights subdivision and walk or drive that area, that represents 25%. And for clarity, the houses with a red N on them represent a new house. So that's what it feels like, what 25% feels like. Now, the figure that I just quoted a moment ago, 25%, that's an average across the entire village. But in fact, there are neighborhoods that are much higher than that. For example, both on the east and west side of Green Bay Road, south of South Avenue, on the west side, it's at 38%. On the east side, it's a touch higher. And the highest demolition rate on one street is Mary Street, immediately east of Green Bay Road, where it's about 70% of the homes. The highest rate in the village is just north of the center of the village, along Park Ave, from Park Avenue to Dundee, and from Greenwood to Bluff. That's at 43%, and it's inching up toward half the homes. And you can really feel this when you walk up and down those streets. The rate of demolition of landmarks and historically significant structures is increasing. When you look at the percentages of those landmarks and significant structures as a portion of the total demolitions by decade, you can see over time they are increasing. The rate is increasing. Okay, so the big takeaways from this: about 10% of the houses in Glencoe have great historic significance. Glencoe has the second fewest certified landmarks on the North Shore, both by quantity and percentage. Over the last 20 years, Glencoe has the highest percentage of new houses on the North Shore. Since 1990, 25% of the housing stock has been replaced. And the rate of demolition of significant and landmark houses is increasing. Oop, I apologize, I pressed the wrong button. So what we would like to do is to come back at a future meeting and talk about some of the things that the commission has been doing recently. We've taken a look at our neighboring communities' preservation and demolition ordinances, fee structures, and generally their policies regarding landmarks and significant houses. We would like to come back with a set of about a dozen specific recommendations that are both incentives and disincentives for demolition. And they concern both policy issues as well as ordinances. The preservation ordinance, the zoning ordinance, as well as the building code. So what we're hoping to do tonight is to give you a high-level overview of some of the observations that this commission has put together, as well as giving you a glimpse of our next discussion we hope to have. And with that, I'd like to suggest it'd be a great time for questions, comments, and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for excellent presentation. And now's a chance for board members if you have questions. But let me just say, I certainly would like to hear part 2. So board members, and if anybody has questions or comments.
I've got a question. Thank you. That was helpful, interesting. I live in an old house. I love old houses. So I'm certainly in favor of trying to do something. One question I have though is maybe for our next meeting, if you can get some sort of data about the differences in selling a house that is a landmark versus selling a house that is not. How much of an effect does it have on the market for houses? Since I think that's one of the things that people worry about when a house is designated, whether it removes some of the freedom that they have to do things through a sale.
Sure, that's a great question, and we'll be happy to pull together some data. And I will say that there's a lot of opinions on that, on one side and on the other side. So in fairness, we'll try to present a balanced approach.
Yeah, and that's where if we have data that shows both sides rather than the fear side, it'd be nice to see.
Yes.
Anybody else have questions for the chair or members of the Historic Preservation Commission? And does anyone, like I said, I would like to hear part 2. Does anyone disagree with that?
Hi, this is Pete. Peter and the rest of the commission, thank you so much. Agree, great presentation. I have a super simple question and then some comments. The first question is, you mentioned some folks at the beginning. Was that the whole of your the commission, or was that just the folks that were to be here tonight?
That is the entirety of the commission.
Thank you. And I am eager to see part 2. I suggest we do this sooner, not later. And I hope that the recommendations on policy and ordinances is not just what others are doing, but something that the board can act upon. So it's great to have these, it would be great in my mind to have these recommendations in a form of something we can vote on so that we can start to take action and put our opinions down on record. The discussion is great, I love it, we need to know it, it's an important thing to consider. But personally, I'm eager to get to the point of codifying these values.
I have a quick question, President Rona.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you again, Commissioner, for this presentation. I was curious if there's any thoughts on why Winnetka has seemingly next to none. I thought that was a kind of a interesting data point that seemed very out of line compared to the other neighboring communities. Thanks.
I agree with you. I can say a little bit of cheerleading. We have better architecture. But I think their process is significantly different than ours is. Glencoe has done the architectural survey throughout the village. They've identified what is valuable here, historically valuable. I don't believe that Winnetka has done that yet. And so their process is a little bit reversed. So my understanding is if you have an older home and would like to, let's say, modify it or tear it down, for example, that then that becomes a subject of a study of, does that house have historic significance? And then that triggers, if it's yes, that triggers one path. If no, that triggers a different path. And so I would suggest that we're ahead of the game Glencoe is ahead of the game, as are some other municipalities, but there are some that are not. As to why there's so few, I'm not quite sure why.
Thank you.
Trustee Hallwax, also to add to Chair Van Vecten's comments, the Village of Winnetka earlier this year, I believe in February or March, recently had several village board meetings where they discussed modifications to their historic preservation ordinances and did vote to enact some changes if you were interested in learning further. But that's all that I had for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else want to comment about the excellent presentation we just got from the Historic Preservation Commission? And if not, I think we should plan on a second presentation. I think, Pete's right. We want to do that sooner rather than later. Sooner means we're not waiting 3 years. We do have a budget to do, so we're going to have to turn to that now. But I'd suggest the commission should talk to village staff, and we'll, at the earliest opportunity, I'm looking forward to hearing part 2. And let me say one other thing. Serving on boards and commissions is often a thankless task. But not tonight. I want to say to the chair and the members of the commission, we appreciate what you do. You're making our village better. So thank you and keep at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So that was our historic preservation discussion. The next item for the committee of the whole is a discussion regarding backyard chickens on private property, which is something that's been raised periodically in the village and most recently by Trustee Mulvaney. It's permitted in some North Shore towns, not in others. And I'll ask Public Works Director Dave Mao and Public Works Management Analyst Jeffrey Mosley to present.
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. As noted earlier this summer, Trustee Mulvaney asked if the topic of backyard chickens could be discussed by the board at some point. And so here we are tonight. And following up on the write-up included in your agenda packet, joining us tonight is our new Public Works Management Analyst, Jeff Mosley, to walk us through a very brief presentation just to initiate a discussion of the topic and direct staff on possible next steps. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jeff.
Hello, thank you, everyone.
Jeff, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm not sure.
Jordan, are you and Jeff?
Yeah.
Who's going to advance that slide?
I was muted, I'm sorry. Jeff, are you able to share your screen? If not, I can certainly do that for you.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
All right, just give me 1 second, please. All right, let me know when I am sharing.
There we go.
Jordan, you are
Yes,
sharing.
yep.
Thank you. And I hope I'm in presenter mode for you, Jeff.
Yes, looks good. As said previously, staff was asked to look into whether just begin looking at whether to allow backyard chickens on private property. Next slide, please. We did a cursory investigation into what some of our neighboring communities do. We found that Highland Park, Deerfield, and Evanston and Northbrook allow chickens and to be kept on private property in residential areas. I would note that, however, that Northbrook restricts keeping of chickens on properties larger than 2 acres. So that effectively means that most residential properties may not keep chickens on their property. There are various advantages and disadvantages to keeping chickens on properties, as discussed in the write-up. Next slide, please. What we'd like from the village board tonight is some direction on how to proceed from here. First of all, we'd like to know if the staff should further pursue writing a change to our village code to allow chickens on private property, and if so, some direction on some of the specific regulations we should include in our ordinance. Some things to be considered include like limits on numbers of chickens. Most communities did have a cap somewhere between 4 and 6 chickens. Most communities that allow chickens also specifically banned roosters from properties, so people could only keep the hens. We'd also like to get your input on whether we should require licenses or permits for this activity, what kind of regulations on coops we should enact, and any other kinds of regulations that we should consider, such as many communities prohibited slaughtering chickens on private property. Next slide. This last slide has some other coop examples, so you can see what a coop could look like in a backyard setting. So, gonna turn it over to the
And
board
with
now
that, I
for
think we
any
just
discussion.
open it up for comment and discussion.
And board members and Pete, feel free to speak up here as to what your idea is.
Sure, I'll go first, since I've been accused of this request. You know, I feel like hens in particular, we're saying chickens, but I think it's a default assumption that hens are what we're after here. Unlikely that we want to have roosters, and hens are producing the eggs, of course, and they're quiet. I also like the idea of limiting the number of hens. Probably 6 seems like a reasonable upper limit to me. I see very little downside here to allowing hens in people's backyards. We probably want some rules around containment. I don't know if anybody else on the board is familiar with backyard coops, but they are pretty straightforward. They are easy to maintain. They are many benefits that you can imagine, not only the eggs themselves, but the process and the education that goes with it. They are not usually done to save money. In this case, you will spend a heck of a lot more on your coop than you will ever recover in eggs. So it's not about really the money saving, it's about the process and the management of the food. There are very few, if any, noises and odors that many people will, I think, raise as concerns. There just aren't noisy animals. And as I say, they're easily managed. Another common concern would be predators, you know, attracting coyotes or something. But typically hen owners and those who are investing in hens don't want their animals being eaten any much as the animal itself wants to be eaten. So generally speaking, I would say it's an unrealized concern, because the owners should maintain their systems to prevent these tasty morsels to a coyote or something. probably at least as well protected. Well, anyways, I don't mean that. So anyhow, those are my initial thoughts. I think this is a no-brainer in my mind. I have a hard time imagining why we would not allow it. By the way, the current ordinance does not have a penalty or an enforcement element to it, as I read it. So I don't know really what could be done to stop it. I think having a license seems like a reasonable item to add as well if we were to go ahead and approve chickens, backyard hens. Sorry. Those are my initial thoughts. I'll happy to react to others later if anybody else has a thought.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about hens?
Could I make a comment?
Sorry,
Could I make
go
a
ahead.
comment?
All right, so Dudley and then Joe.
Okay. Okay, in reviewing the ordinances as they were explained in the staff report, I found the Deerfield approach to be fairly interesting. I understand it's a combination of limiting the number of hens, also having a permit process, and I believe they also regulate the placement of the coop. So that's just something that I think is worth looking at.
All thoughtful points. Joe?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would just agree with Dudley. I was basically going to say that I think that certainly to Pete's point, it sounds like a no-brainer in terms of letting people be able to have this, and it would be just up to us to put in the right sort of governance around it so that it's so that it's something that we don't just overlook something that's would be a problem for the neighbors, coyotes, all the other things that you mentioned. But in general, I'd be supportive.
Anybody else?
One thing I agree with no roosters. I think having hens in the backyard is a nice thing. One thing though is if having something around how these hens are taken care of. So if they're, I don't know, I mean, if there is an odor because they're not cleaned, or not that we expect one, but just having something where if a complaint is made, the village can come in and do something about it. Whether it's a coop that's in disrepair or I don't know. I don't know, but just something where we don't just let it, you have it and then you don't have to take care of it.
Excellent. All these are good points, which means that if we're to proceed, we need a serious, thoughtful proposal to address all the problems we expect, recognizing, of course, if it goes south, we could always change our mind later. Anybody else?
Just to say that I agree the general proposition, let folks have hens subject to the reasonable regulations that'll have to be built into the ordinance to allow it. But it's sure, why not?
Gail isn't here to weigh in. I think I agree with that. Let me throw in some real politic. This was proposed some years ago when Scott Feldman was president, and I asked him about what happened, and he said, and this isn't all that unusual, he said that there was a proponent who wanted this, but the proponent and his neighbor were like the Hatfields and the McCoys, and so the neighbor organized a bunch of people to say no, and it was sort of defeated by acclamation as a result of all that organization. That is what's known in village biz as NIMBY, and I think we should all recognize that that is possible. So, but Highland Park is a regular town with regular people, and they have it, and life goes on. So that suggests to me that we probably could do this without destroying life as we know it in Glencoe. And therefore, let's see. And if there's a huge uproar, we can reconsider. But it sounds like it's something that we should take the next step and see what happens. That sound okay to everybody? I mean, and the steps that are proposed that have been raised by all the trustees, those are all sensible things we could think about. And, if we do this and it turns out to become Coyote Heaven or a Roadrunner cartoon, then we'll just do something else later. Okay, well, thank you for the presentation.
Before President Rowan, before we move on, I just want to
Yep.
make sure I understand the direction. We're gonna come back to the board, likely at a committee of the whole, in the future, with perhaps a draft ordinance with some of these regulations as they've been outlined tonight, integrated into that. We've taken notes. So what we'll do is then bring that back for board discussion at a later date. We'll determine when we can get that back on a committee of the whole agenda, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and let me just say, because I don't want people to say, they're going to say it anyway, but I don't want people to say this was a surprise. So we should do what we can to notify people that it's being considered. So if they want to weigh in, they can. I don't think, unless we know of someone that absolutely is going to do this, we're not in a position to be able to notify next door neighbors, but we should notify people through village, various notices, the memo and things like that we're thinking about this.
Yes,
So,
we certainly can do so.
okay. All right. Well, I think that sounds like a plan. So thank you for our presenters. And thank you, Pete, for getting us to look at this again. Let's see how it goes. The next item is a review and discussion of the golf club clubhouse fundraising. And I would ask our general manager to present on this. Stella, take it away.
Thank you, President Rowan, members of the board. I'm happy to present an update on Friends of the Glencoe Golf Club and our fundraising efforts. This began in 2019 with establishing a brand new 501c3, launching a brand new charity such as ours and others is always a challenge. Not really having a reputation or a set of donors to lean on. Since its inception, we've made great strides. We do now have a formalized Friends board. We also have a Clubhouse Civic Advisory Committee who is focused on engaging residents and the civic benefits of the clubhouse. We have 6 members on our formal board, 5 of them being residents. We have been engaged for almost 2 years now with Campbell & Company as our fundraising consultant. We have gone through many training sessions with our board, with our consultant on actually the ins and outs of fundraising. How do we do it? How do we prepare? What do we need in our back pockets to even start this process? A lot of things have taken place. We have our webpage, we have a PayPal portal, we have pamphlets, we have interior renderings of the proposed clubhouse, and just a lot of formalized processes just to get to the point where we can actually start asking people for money. We officially launched our campaign at our centennial celebration with the announcement that we had a very generous, anonymous $125,000 matching gift. This was an amazing gift that really helped to launch our campaign. As it sits right now, Friends has $24,500 in their fund. 8,000 of that has been raised since the matching grant was announced. So we're very happy for that. Our goal is to have that grant matched by the end of the calendar year. So by January, we should have over $250,000 minimally in that Friends fund. We are now engaging, since Campbell & Company is at the end of their contract with us, our anonymous donor has also generously recognized that we need additional help to keep this fundraising momentum going. And we are in search of a campaign director for the fundraising. This person would be an independent contractor for Friends of the Glencoe Golf Club. It's a part-time position. They would not be an employee. They'd be working under my direction and be helping to direct Friends and our civic committee with where we go now. What are our next steps in the process, cultivating. They will start soliciting and helping us put events on to start raising money. We are now at the point that this campaign director's position has been posted. I have received several very, very well educated and experienced people that have raised money on the North Shore. So I'm very hopeful to be bringing this new person on probably within the next 3 weeks so that we can just continue our momentum. And just speaking a little bit how you said board members don't get enough recognition. I can't tell you how happy I am that we have our Friends Board and our Civic Committee. Without them, my job would be very overwhelming, especially the generosity of our anonymous gift. Can't be done without volunteers. Like everybody on this panel tonight, aside from staff, your time and your efforts are really appreciated by myself, and I'm sure by the rest of the village staff. So a public thank you to everyone that serves on the boards associated with the golf club. Much appreciated. That's kind of a brief overview of where we are with Friends. We do have some events planned coming up. We sent out an email blast today with our first kind of broad request for funds. We have a database of 20,000 names. So we are hoping to get a lot of, smaller donations, but we really want to get the word out. And that's our goal right now until we get our campaign director on, and then we'll fine tune it and go after some larger grants. Going along with the Clubhouse project is the next portion of this memo, which is bringing our driving range up to full capacity and full use. Right now, our driving range is one of the best ranges in the public sector in this area because we have grass tees. The only drawback is that we don't have the use of drivers or woods, which is what pushes most ranges to full capacity and triple the amount of revenue that we are currently making. Right now, we do not have the proper barrier netting in place, so we can't allow the use of a full range. It is a safety issue. We have had some issues with balls exiting the property already. We've done many changes to the range to try to avoid having any golf balls exiting, but until we have the proper netting, it's impossible. And of course, without the proper netting, we do not allow drivers. We're very inhibited on what we can do at the driving range. So we are proposing to move forward with the plan that was presented last year, not only to protect our neighbors, but this would be a great source of incremental revenue. This would be new revenue to the golf club that would help us pay back a bond and relieve some of the stress, not only from fundraising, but relieve the stress from asking the public for support by allowing us to help ourselves to raise the money through this generation of additional revenue. It would be a great enhancement, not only to the golf club, but it would relieve this stress. Along the lines of, also putting up this barrier netting would be some really nice enhancements to the community. We would be creating a sledding hill. A lot of people in this area, and even some people that are long-term residents, they bring their kids over here. It's a little bit of a slope, but we would make it something that is a little bit more entertaining and actually call it a sledding hill and try to engage the community and let them know that there's a place to come over here. We're also considering putting in a walking path on Wadsley Road with some berming and landscaping along the driving range edge. There currently is not a sidewalk. So residents walking in their buggies and walking their dogs and just taking a walk they are walking in the street, which is not a great experience. We do have some kind of a draft plan that we worked with an architect on. This is just linear drawings. As we move forward and with approvals, we would hope to go to a 3D rendering with animation that would show really colorized what landscaping could do and berming would do along Waysley Road. Currently, Waysley is not very pretty. It has all the telephone poles and electrical lines for the neighborhood running down it. And I think that this would be an enhancement to the view and for people walking and using just the street in general. This could happen this winter. We do have money in our capital reserve fund for it. If we are allowed to do this, based on an approvals, we could have this done and be ready by next season and not have any revenue loss due to construction. So that is my conclusion of both of those very important things that are happening at the golf club. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ella, did you have some visuals that you wanted to provide on that or no?
I thought you were going to put it on there. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were putting the PowerPoint put together on it.
I do have a picture somewhere. Sorry, that's my fault. Al, any questions in the meantime? I could find this picture.
I have one quick question. Could you just remind us what you anticipate the incremental revenue to be from the driving range?
Currently, we're averaging about 65,000. And our closest neighbor that has a similar layout is Wilmette. And last year they made 200,000. And they are mats only. They do not have a grass tee line. So our grass tee line is really a draw. And then being able to bring in drivers, I feel that we would definitely match the numbers that they're seeing. So it would be more than 3 times what we're currently making. We would see our return in just over 4 years.
Thank you.
So this is Pete. Can you tell me about the impact this project would have on trees?
We would not plan on taking any trees down as the range sits right now. There's a border of tree. There's no trees in the range at all. So we would not take down one tree. We would leave the trees up that are adjacent to Waysley Road because it would actually help as a buffer.
Can everyone see that?
Yep. Yes.
Stella, do you want to
Okay, so this
explain what
is the driving range at Northmore Country Club. It's kind of an idea of what our range looks like. There are no trees on a driving range typically, just for ease of operation and picking up the balls. And you can see that their trees along the sides are left in place to pretty much block the view from golfers. And one of I think the netting on the left-hand side is actually along a street. So they wanted to keep those in place to block the street as well.
Yeah, I think one aspect of this, and we've talked about this a bit, we talked a bit about it last year as the budget was being considered. The height of these nets is not insignificant, 70 to 80 feet roughly. That is often what generates the complaints from neighbors, the visual change. I think the one thing we've been talking about, Stella and I and a few others, is the newer technology relative to the composition of nets, is that as you see here, there is certainly some visual aspect of it. You can see the nets, but they are quite transparent, not fully transparent, but more so than they have been in previous, before, with older technology that was not available. So that's an aspect of this that I think as we proceed through, will generate some questions from the public, from the neighbors that exist along Wesley Road. Stella, refresh my memory. This would impact about 4 houses along Wesley directly.
Three houses face the driving range at this point. There's one house on the corner of Hofelder that does not face it or look at it. Actually, they have already verbally told me they support it because they have had some errant shots on their property. So it's three homes.
I have the Google Earth up. Is it worth looking at that? Are we reaching a point where we need to know really where we're putting this fence? I can share a screen if that's useful.
You know what, Trustee Mulvaney, I actually have one someplace and I'm trying to stop my share. And I'll pull it up real quick.
And then, the comment about the nets, Stella, I don't know if your Audubon Society rating has an opinion on these nets, but obviously a transparent net becomes a risk to birds. I just don't want that to impact your credentials in that.
Thank you. Yes, I totally agree. I will make sure that we run that by them.
So this is an aerial shot of the driving range area along this side here. The right side of the screen is Wesley Road. And Stella, I think I'm accurate. The netting line would begin roughly around here and proceed to about this general area.
Correct. And the height of the netting would be its greatest at the apex of a golf ball trajectory study. So, a golf ball goes up and then it comes down. So the netting towards the back end of the driving range would not have to be as high as the midpoint.
That's where you're getting the 3 houses in the center of the block.
1, 2, 3. Yeah. And this one is that one at the corner that Stella was mentioning. The corner of Hofelder and Wesley.
Yeah, this whole area is the house on the corner. Then this is house number 1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, Stella, I don't think they can see you.
Oh,
They can just see mine. So this is
sorry.
house number 1, house number 2, house number 3. And then this is the one that sits on the corner of Hofelder and Wesley, which has a rather large wall and large trees around it.
Actually, it's one house further east, Phil. The red house is number 1.
Oh, that's number 1?
Yes. And then
Okay.
you go east. So that's 1, 2 is one further down east, and 3 is on the corner of
Okay.
Fairfield and Wesley.
I think what you're saying is that's where the large or tall net is.
Excuse me?
I think you're saying that's where the tall net is.
The tallest portion would probably be at the midpoint.
Right around here.
Yes.
And on the other side is equally tall and length.
Yes. Yes. To protect the golfers playing
First hole.
the first hole.
Anybody else have questions about either of our 2 golf subjects? Okay, well, thank you for a very clear, excellent presentation. Sounds like the fundraising is apace, and the plan for the net has been a longstanding plan that was, I think, put off because of the pandemic. And, we don't want to surprise anybody, but let's put that back in the go proposition, so that if people want to tell us about that and about their interest, they have a chance to do it. Okay, I think that is the last item for our committee of the whole. Thank you very much, Stella, for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Is there any other business anyone would like to discuss before we adjourn this meeting? We have another meeting in a little more than 20 minutes. If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Real quick, Jordan, did we get any further public comments during the meeting?
No, we did not.
Thank you, Phil, for calling that out.
No problem.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Onderdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion is carried. Thank you, everybody, and see you in 20 minutes.
We're gonna keep this feed live. So if you want to shut off your cameras and make sure your mics are muted, that would be great. We'll see you soon.
Hi there, Jody. You can feel free to stay joining for the meeting, but if you wanted to remain on mute and then turn off your video until that
Yep.
point, that'd be perfect. But I'm glad you're able
It'll
to.
be a little while, Jody, but not
No
too.
worries.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Thank you for the direction.
Absolutely.
Hi, guys.
Hello. President Rowan, it is just after 7 p.m. If you want to begin with the precatory comments, you can do so. And I think by then, hopefully Trustee Vree will join.
Okay. All right. Jordan, are we recording?
We still are, yes.
Okay. This is the Thursday, September 23rd, 2021 regular village board meeting at 7 p.m. Pursuant to recently adopted amendments to the Illinois Open Meetings Act included in Public Act 101-0640, public bodies may in certain circumstances hold entirely virtual public meetings without a quorum physically present in any one location. Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2021-23 has extended this provision through October 16, 2021. As village president, I've made the determination that it is not practical nor prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting of the village board is being conducted virtually with members of the board and staff participating through the Zoom webinar platform. Village manager Phil Corrali is in the Village Hall Council chambers in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. Let's call the meeting to order and have a roll call. Village Manager Corrali, will you read the roll call?
Certainly. Trustee Hallwax.
Here.
Trustee Listener. Trustee Mulvaney.
Here.
Trustee Onderdonk. Trustee Rubin.
Here.
Trustee Vree.
I'm here, but my video says the host was blocking my video.
Oh,
Now it's,
does it work better?
now it's working.
Okay.
I'm here.
You can blame Jordan for that one. We have a quorum.
Okay, as noted, today's board meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting via Zoom webinar software and is being audio recorded and simulcast on the village's Facebook page. A quorum of members of the board are present via remote access. As required by law, I will now ask for roll calls rather than voice votes on any agenda item requiring a vote. The first item is consideration of minutes. I'd request a motion to approve the following meeting minutes, which were circulated. The Committee of the Whole on August 19, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. and the Board of Trustees regular meeting on August 19, 2021 at 7 p.m. Unless there are any comments or proposed changes, could we have a motion to approve?
So
So
moved.
move.
Do we get a second in there?
Second, Mulvaney.
Okay, Phil? Roll
Trustee
call.
Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Underdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
Motion is carried. Next item is public comment. In accordance with the supplemental rule the board approved on April 16th, 2020. Here's how public comment will be taken at this meeting. The email address and telephone number designated for public comment for this meeting were published with the meeting agenda. At this time, I'd ask Assistant to the Village Manager, Jordan Lester, to read the public comments, if any, received on non-agenda items that were submitted prior to the meeting. Public comments on agenda items, if any, will be read when we reach that item on the agenda. Jordan, did we get anything?
President Rowan, no, we did not receive any public comment this evening.
Right. No, we had public comment earlier for the Committee of the Whole. If a member of the public would like to submit a public comment during the meeting, please email your comment to glencoe@villageofglencoe.org. Comments submitted during the meeting may be read at the end of the meeting, and written comments should be limited to 400 words. The next item on the agenda is reports of committees. The first report is the Committee of the Whole, and I'll do that. We just had a meeting of the Committee of the Whole. We had a presentation from the Historic Preservation Commission on the first of two parts on where we stand with historic preservation and tear downs. Very helpful presentation, and the proposal is that they will come back with specific suggestions on how we might do a better job of preserving our historic buildings. The next presentation concerned the possibility of chicken coops, actually hens, in residential areas. We had a brief presentation about that, and the matter was referred back to village staff to make proposals and to notify the community about possible proposals for having hens in residential areas with appropriate limitations. And the last presentation was about the golf clubhouse and the fundraising for that, and also plans to improve the driving range by putting a tall fence around it. That's what we talked about at the Committee of the Whole. The next item is the Finance Committee, Trustee Vree.
Thank you. We met earlier this week and had our normal agenda items, monthly finances, and then the Community Investment Program or plan. And all in, Village is doing well. The general fund is coming in according to our projections. The one thing to note, property tax bills went out late this year. So we're trending behind where we were last year, but that's just the timing of when those tax bills actually went out. Where we are trending ahead, and in some cases significantly ahead, are in building permits, sales tax, income tax, and then our places for eating tax. It's above, all of those are coming in above what we expected. Places for eating is sort of our newest one, so we're still figuring out what's an appropriate number to use for that. But so far it's coming in very nicely. So village finances are all in good shape. When we talked about our community investment plan, sort of normal things, though we're having some supply chain issues, can't get cars as early as we thought we could. Sort of normal as compared to the rest of the country. And then we looked out at our financial forecasts for the next 5 years. And again, we're in the midst of what's been a pretty good year, all things considered, especially coming out of COVID. And we are talking about what may change in the future. Some of the things that we ought to forecast, some of the things we ought to be concerned with. Inflation is one of the notable ones. Also, all the federal intervention we've gotten as a result of COVID. We can't really expect that forever. So those are things we're considering, and those were the things we talked about at our meeting.
Thank you very much. The next item, we're going to be a little challenged here, is the Plan Commission. Our normal representative on that is Trustee Listener. She's not here.
I can take it, President Rowan.
Okay.
I will say their normal Plan Commission meeting, which would have been held this week, was canceled. So there was no September Plan Commission meeting. At this point, it does appear that there is likely going to be a Plan Commission meeting in the month of October, and that date is the 27th. So nothing to report in terms of any action taken by the Plan Commission.
Okay, thank you. Golf Advisory Committee, Trustee Hallwax. Is there a report on the Golf Advisory Committee?
Absolutely. So we met on Monday, and again, positive news for the golf course. With great weather and continued great play. So the rounds for August were just under 7,400, which exceeds budget by just under 1,400. That makes revenues are exceeding by 15%. To note, there was a Play for Pink event, which raised 4,200 for breast cancer research. One of the challenges, or say only things to note on that side, is staffing, which continues to be a challenge for hourly and seasonal workers. I think everybody's aware of some of the challenges that we've had as a nation and the state of Illinois. No surprise here, but there's been no interest in the job postings for the last 2 months, and the competition for hourly workers is fairly fierce, I'm sure, as everyone has seen, just looking around at help wanted signs. So the staff is planning strategies for next year and next season to attract more interested parties. The Friends of the Glencoe Golf Course has raised currently just under $25,000, and we had a board meeting this week. We are looking to have another event to generate more interest and more gifting, because we still have that $125,000 matching gift, which we need to hit by the end of the year. So we want to be able to raise that and then be able to achieve that matching gift. And with that comes some other planning on types of gifting levels and other type ways to generate interest. So that's where we're focused right now.
Thank you very much. The next item is the Sustainability Task Force. Trustee Mulvaney, is there a report on the Sustainability Task Force?
Yes, sir. As usual, the Sustainability Task Force is hard at work making Glencoe the most desirable and sustainable community in the universe. Recently, we are focused on some carbon and energy issues when we are working with neighboring communities on some solar initiatives, keeping our eye on what's happening with community solar. We've had a focus on green lawns as we are entering the fall here, and how to sustainably manage the real estate that you own. Along those lines, we have a leaf blower proposal and recommendation coming to the board hopefully soon. We've drafted our recommendations, and this Tuesday when we meet, we'll be finalizing that and hopefully getting it over to the board shortly thereafter. And this will be recommendations on limitations of gas-powered leaf blowers. Otherwise, we are focused on public education and awareness on our other initiatives. Please look out for those articles and things we post on Next Door Neighbor, etc., and do the liking and the clicking because that helps promote our message. So please, if you see those articles, support the Glencoe Sustainability Task Force with your likes and whatever else you do on those things. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The next item is our newly named Glencoe Council for Inclusion and Community. Trustee Rubin, is there a report on that new council? Old council, new name.
Yes, there is. Thank you, Howard. On the 9th of September, we hosted an event, a town hall meeting at Writers Theater to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion within our community. And our panelists were the Associate Pastor of North Shore United Methodist Church and the President of Glencoe Clergy Association, Barbara Javor. Also, our Public Library's Executive Director, Andrew Kim, and the owner of the flower shop in town, Brooke Lawler. It was an excellent presentation followed by a very lively discussion. There were 20 or so people that were there in person at Writers Theater, and there were some more folks that watched it by Zoom. And if you haven't seen it yet, you can find it on YouTube. I didn't see it posted yet on our village website. I'm sure it will be, but you can find it quite easily on YouTube. And I highly recommend it. I think it's very much worth listening, including the discussion at the end. Prior to that, on the 1st of September, the council held a meeting, which was in part planning for the 9th, but also planning for other ongoing activities of ours, and some discussion about potential budgetary needs, looking at potential events next year. More to come on that. That's it.
Thank you very much. I should say that I was one of the people who was watching the forum on the 9th on Zoom, and it was pretty interesting. The next item is the Historic Preservation Commission. Of course, we've just heard from them at length in our committee of the whole, but Trustee Onderdonk, do you have a brief report on the Committee on the Historic Preservation Commission?
Yes, very briefly. Basically, of course, you heard the presentation we've been working on for the past several meetings, looking at sort of our present situation, and then also looking at some specific recommendations, ordinances, and policies for the future. The other matter I wanted to highlight was there was a special landmark recognition ceremony at St. Paul AME Church on August 29th. I understand the village president, you were there, and it was a success.
And there was, thank you. And I should say there was a very excellent presentation. It was a very interesting event. And in addition to me, Peter Van Vechten, who's chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, had a little talk as well. And then there was a church service with all that entails. Thank you for all the reports. The next item on the agenda is the report of officers. And the first part of that is the village manager's report. And the first item on that is a swearing in. So Phil, why don't we?
Yes, thank you, President Rowan. And I've got the best seat in the house this evening because I've got a room full of public safety officers. I've got our newest lieutenant. I've got his family and a dog in here all at the same time. And it's pretty exciting. So we are going to get started with that swearing in ceremony. Forgive us as we kind of do a little bit of logistic move around in the room, but Chief Lewandowski is going to get started with a few comments about Ryan Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Corrali. Mr. President, trustees, I'm pleased to publicly recognize an important milestone for one of our public safety officers today. Ryan, can you join me up next? Try to post it on the camera here. Lieutenant Harrison is accompanied tonight by his wife, Ashley, his daughter, Lily, and his son.
Bill, if you can get Chief Lewandowski closer to the microphone. This is virtual and we're having trouble hearing.
Hold on one second. We're going to need to turn that microphone on.
I'm sorry, can you hear me better now?
We can indeed. That's great.
Okay. Officer Ryan Harrison was promoted to Public Safety Lieutenant on August 30th, and he is presently assigned as a police night shift supervisor. Ryan began his career in Glencoe as a public safety officer on March 21st of 2014. Ryan was one of the first officers hired after I was hired as the public safety director. So I have had the pleasure to watch Ryan grow as an officer. His strong work ethic, his positive outlook, drive to succeed, and selfless dedication to serve others have brought him very far in a relatively short time. In addition to being a fully cross-trained public safety officer, Ryan has served as a detective, field training officer, evidence technician, and paramedic. Over the course of his impressive career, he has earned the respect of his fellow officers as well as his supervisors. In fact, his fellow officers elected him union president in 2016, a position he held until being promoted. In addition, Ryan represents Glencoe on the NIPUS Mobile Field Force, where he was very active during the civil unrest last summer and fall. He makes himself available as a resource to all of his coworkers, and he volunteers for extra duty, always trying to help in any way possible. As lieutenant, he has taken over the responsibility for our investigation section, managing our criminal investigations and supervising 2 detectives. Ryan's training and experience, as well as his ability to work with others, prepared him well for this opportunity to lead and mentor the next generation of public safety officers. I fully expect him to transition to his new role as a supervisor without difficulty and become a valuable member of the command staff very quickly. Congratulations, Ryan. I look forward to working with you as you take the next steps into a leadership role. You certainly have a very bright future here in Glencoe. Thank you for all that you do for this department and the community. I'll now ask Mr. Crowley to present the oath. And here's a copy for you.
Okay, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ryan Harrison,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the ordinances of the Village of Glencoe,
and the ordinances of the Village of Glencoe,
and that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the position of Public Safety Lieutenant
the duties of the position of Public Safety Lieutenant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we may have lost audio.
Well, we'll get it in just one second,
Okay.
President Rowan. I think they're taking some
That's
pictures
good.
real
They should
quick.
take pictures, and then I have a couple things I want to say about this.
Thank you. Sorry for that as we're kind of moving through the room.
Okay.
Wanted to
Well,
just congratulate.
While they're still there, I want to say something to Lieutenant Ryan Harrison. So when they're done taking pictures, let me know.
I think we're ready.
Okay. I want to thank our public safety director for being a good judge of talent, which he clearly demonstrated tonight. And more to the point, congratulations to Lieutenant Harrison on what has been, and I'm sure will continue to be, an exceptional career. The village has been lucky to have you as one of our public safety officers. And now we have the very good fortune to have you as one of the leaders of our public safety department. As you move forward in your new position, let me say something that is not just a slogan. In Glencoe, public safety officers are our friends. They're part of the fabric of our community. You serve with distinction and honor, and most important, you have our backs. And I want you to know, and I want the members of the department to know, that the feeling is mutual. The people of Glencoe and I and the village board are your friends, and we will have your backs too. So thank you and congratulations. Okay. The next item is Phil. Take it away. Another new.
I've got a few other things to point out, but as the team filters out of the room, just to echo President Rowan's comments, thank you to our public safety team for all that they do, and congratulations to Lieutenant Harrison. We are looking forward to his many contributions. So I will continue with the manager's report this evening. Those of you who were watching during the committee of the whole meeting that took place a little earlier this evening had the opportunity to be introduced briefly to our new Public Works Management Analyst, Jeff Wadsley. I'm pleased to more formally introduce him, and Jeff's turned his camera on so he can wave at you all. He started his employment with the village last Monday, and he comes to the village of Glencoe following 20 years of service to the village of City of Crystal Lake in their Public Works and Community Development departments, where he had responsibilities over a broad range of department initiatives and special projects. Jeff has a Bachelor of Arts from the U of I at Urbana-Champaign and a Master of Public Administration from Southern Illinois University. He is definitely getting up to speed on a lot of important projects that are going on. To Trustee Mulvaney's point, the Sustainability Task Force, which is meeting next week, will have the chance to be introduced to their new staff liaison, because Jeff is going to be serving in that role in addition to a series of others. We are so glad to have Jeff's able hands at work here in the village, and we look forward to the many contributions he will provide as well. So thanks, Jeff, and welcome to the team.
Thank you very much.
And from the trustees, welcome. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right, just a few other items I wanted to make mention of this evening, one of which relates to a COVID-19 vaccination policy. Like a few of our neighboring communities, and as well as recently announced by the Glencoe Park District this week, I wanted to report that last week, the village put in place a COVID-19 vaccination policy for our staff team. While we have a very high rate of vaccination already in our organization, it was deeply important to me and to our leadership team to make sure we had a vaccination policy in place to underscore the importance of getting vaccinated. Those employees who are granted an exemption from the policy will be required to submit to weekly COVID-19 testing. I wanted to just make mention of the fact that I'm grateful to both of our unions, both AFSCME, who represents our public works maintenance operators, mechanics, and water plant operators, and the FOP, who represents our public safety officers, for their support of our efforts and their partnership with us on this. It's a very important statement to our community about how much we value the safety and well-being of those that we serve here in Glencoe. And we wanted to make sure that we had that policy in place to just underscore that. So I wanted to make that announcement this evening. Obviously, the members of the board are already familiar with that, but for the benefit of the public at large. On a completely separate subject, Light the Lights. Staff has been considering how to move forward with Light the Lights for 2021. As you may recall, we canceled this event last year, given the state guidelines for large-scale public events at the time. Given our generally very positive experiences here in Glencoe with large-scale events during the past few months, and the lifting of limitations by the state of Illinois on large-scale outdoor gatherings, we do believe that we could host a Light the Lights event this year. You may recall back in 2018 and 2019, in addition to the unveiling of our downtown holiday lights, Light the Lights grew into a full evening event on the Friday after Thanksgiving. In this case, this year, that would be Friday, November 26th. Back in 2018 and 19, both of which were related to our sesquicentennial celebration, we had a wine walk, trackless train, carolers, reindeer on Wyman Green, pictures with Santa, and other festive components. We think it's possible to facilitate some of those components in 2021, We would not recommend moving forward, for instance, with a wine walk or trackless train, just given the logistics of those types of events, but other things that would be fully outdoors and accommodate folks' ability to spread out and enjoy some holiday cheer in November, we do think we could facilitate. So we are happy if the board is in agreement to try to move forward with planning that event. It does take a bit of time, certainly some staff resources. We do have resources in the 2021 budget that would be available for this. And I wanted to make sure before we commence that the board was comfortable moving forward with an event like this. Again, 100% outdoors, and hopefully the weather would cooperate with us to make it a fun evening. Yeah, if the board has any concerns with that, and now's fine, or you let me know if you need to think about it a bit. We would want to get started in the next couple weeks to make sure that we could have all of the logistics tied up in time for the 26th of November.
Let me just say, I think we should start planning.
Okay,
Great.
Seeing nodding heads around the Zoom screen, we will continue and get underway to make that event take place. Public Works has already gotten started checking, testing, replacing lights in many of our downtown streetscape trees. And so they're going to be doing that over the coming month and a half, getting things ready to go. And we will have a festive downtown before we know it. Just a few quick reminders that I wanted to make mention of for the benefit of everyone. As we approach fall, actually we are now in it. I think yesterday was the first day. Homeowners with pools must have their contractors file a permit application with Public Works before pumping those pools out for the season. The application is available on our website, and tomorrow in our e-news blast and in our social media pushes over the coming couple of weeks, we will have a link to that application available. Most pool contractors who work in our community are well aware of the requirements and the responsibilities, but we do ask homeowners to underscore that with their contractors as that process gets underway. Curbside leaf collection does begin sooner than we think, probably in mid to late October. While we always encourage people to mulch leaves on their property, for those that do set them out for collection, information is going to be coming soon on timetables, schedules, and other program reminders. I always like to remind the community that leaf collection is one of our biggest recycling events every year, as all nearly 11,000 cubic yards of leaves that are collected in the village go directly to the Chicago Botanic Garden, where they use it to produce mulch and compost that is spread throughout the Botanic Garden properties. That's a partnership that's been in place for nearly 30 years, and one that is something I think we should be proud of. It benefits everybody here in Glencoe and at the garden. And last, we have received some inquiries about whether there's going to be a bulk garbage collection day this fall. I will say there will not be one this fall, as we hosted this event back in May with LRS, our waste provider. We will have another one in May of 2022. Last year, due to impacts from the COVID pandemic, we moved the event from May to October. So there has been a bit of confusion, and folks are remembering correctly that we did it in October last year, but that was a one-time change. So that'll revert back to the spring. I will remind folks that we have a tremendous number of recycling opportunities available, particularly related to electronics recycling, and our Public Works facility is where you would drop those things off. You can find all that information on our website. We've got a myriad of other recycling opportunities, batteries, light bulbs, you name it, we got it. And we encourage people to continue to avail themselves of that. And last but not least, we've started to get a few questions related to Halloween. It's not too soon to start thinking about Halloween and trick-or-treating. And those questions related to, whether we were going to be making any recommendations on limitations related to door-to-door trick-or-treating. Based off of state guidelines, based off of where things stand right now, again, from doing things in the outdoors, there are no restrictions from coming to us from Cook County or from the state of Illinois relative to that. I checked with about 12.5 of our neighboring communities as well today to see what they were doing. And at this point, nobody is anticipating any restrictions on Halloween. Halloween does fall on a Sunday this year. It's Sunday, October 31st. We may want to consider, and we'll look at this at the staff level, whether or not we want to amend some of those trick-or-treating hours, given that it's a weekend day rather than a weekday. But at this point, we're not recommending any restrictions be placed on trick-or-treating for 2021. Of course, if guidance changes or guidelines shift, we would amend that perspective, but I wanted to let the board know that we are looking into that, and at this point, it seems that most communities on the North Shore, if not all, are planning to resume trick-or-treating as normal. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't have any questions. Any board members have questions?
I have a quick question, and I don't mean to and apologize if this was discussed previously, but I was unfortunately unavailable on Labor Day. We have a family thing I attend every year, but I didn't get any to attend the OAR event. But I've heard unequivocally wonderful feedback about the event. So if anyone on staff maybe wants to comment what the feedback you've gotten, or any of the any positive, negatives, things that we learned, and
Certainly.
interest in possibly doing it again.
Thanks, Trustee Hallwax. That I should have mentioned that. Thanks for asking that question. Staff's experience was generally very positive. While we did have some complaints generally throughout the course of the day, especially during the late morning and early afternoon hours when they were doing sound checks, we had relatively few complaints overall. The neighborhood immediately adjacent to the concert site, which was the Temple Court parking lot, a lot of those neighbors ended up having outdoor gatherings with friends, and it did seem to be a well-received event overall. Again, there were about 3,000 tickets sold. One of the issues that if we do this again next year, that we will want to continue to double down on is to encourage people to utilize our commuter parking lots for parking. Some of the neighborhoods got a little bit busy, but parking was manageable. We didn't have a lot of parking where people weren't supposed to park. It was legal parking. It just was a little tight in some of our surrounding neighborhoods. But overall, I've heard a lot of good feedback. I was there the whole evening, as well as Dave Mao and Carrie Lewandowski, a number of other public works and public safety staff. The event went off without incident, and we're very grateful to the Cadence Family Foundation for it. I think over $100,000 was raised for District 35's PTO as a component of it, and it was a lot of fun. The weather cooperated. We had a little bit of misty rain there at the beginning of it, but for the most part, it was very much a successful event.
Great, thanks for that, and thanks to staff for all the hard work to pull it off. That's great news.
Village Manager Crowley, thank you very much. I think that concludes the village manager's report.
It does.
Which was, a lot of important items. We had an important promotion, a new employee, important policies about COVID. People who know me know that my heart soars like a hawk whenever anyone talks about the leaf collection program. So that was very helpful overall. Next item is the village president's report. There's one item on it, which is consideration of the appointment of Bob Breisblatt to the Sustainability Task Force. He comes highly recommended. I also understand that yesterday was his birthday, which he celebrated like a true Glencoean at Poppy's Social. Is there a motion to approve the appointment of Mr. Bryce Blatt to the Sustainability Task Force?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Phil, could you do a roll call, please?
Certainly. Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Underdunk, trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion carries. And Mr. Bryce Blatt, if you are here, congratulations. You're a member of the Sustainability Task Force, and we look forward to your service to the village. That concludes the president's report. The next item is the consent agenda. And because this is a virtual meeting, we're going to have the village manager read the titles of items to the consent agenda. So Phil, if you could please do that.
Certainly, President Rowan. Item 6A is the August 2021 Village Treasurer's Report and Golf Financial Report. 6B, August 2021 Check Register for the Village of Glencoe and Glencoe Golf Club. Item 6C, ratification of the August 2021 Early Check Register list. Item 6D, consideration of a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a license agreement amendment with Guildhall Restaurant, 694 Vernon Avenue, for the encroachment of temporary outdoor structures into the village right-of-way. Item 6E, consideration of a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a license agreement amendment with Hometown Coffee and Juice LLC and Beal Properties, 700 Vernon Avenue, for the encroachment of temporary outdoor structures into the village right-of-way. And item 6F, consideration of an ordinance further amending Article 14 of Chapter 9 of the Village Code regarding flood control regulation.
Thanks very much. For the benefit of the public, all of these items are supported by written materials in the published agenda. So we've reviewed that, and I'll ask for the trustees, does anyone have any questions or comments? And if not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Trustee Mulvaney, I do have one comment.
Okay, please.
You know, I really appreciate what those restaurants have done to fit in with the fabric of downtown and the investments they've made to you know, sort of respect the right of way. However, I have heard some complaints about Valor and the Jersey barriers intent, the Jersey barriers in particular. And I understand from staff that Valor is considering reapplying for some permits to continue their operation or to rethink their operation. And I'd just like to suggest that to the staff, if they see this application going forward, that we require a higher aesthetic standard than we've seen to date. Something I think equivalent to what's been demonstrated as being possible is, to me anyways, a minimum bar. Just want to get that on record that I have received complaints about it, and I think it's worth adding some tighter aesthetic limitations as we gain experience with this exercise of sharing parking spaces with restaurants.
Thank you for that comment. Does anybody else want to weigh in? You don't have to. I mean, we all want the business district to look its best.
That's helpful feedback, Trustee Mulvaney. And we have heard from Valor that they would like to sit with staff and talk a bit about some options for them moving forward. So that's timely feedback. Thank you.
And let me say, for the benefit of the public, the trustees have talked at an open meeting about, you know, how to deal with the fact that we have businesses that are using the public right of way, street, sidewalk, and what have you. And that's clearly something the village will be looking at, but we didn't want to do it while we're still in the throes of this pandemic. So that, which does not take away at all from Trustee Mulvaney's point, but with all of these, restaurants that are using streets, sidewalks, we're going to be looking at what's appropriate in a non-pandemic world when and if we get there. So with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Segundo.
Village Manager Corrali, please do a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Onderdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is regular business. And there's one item, consideration of a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a contract with Michael Signs, Inc. of Racine, Wisconsin for the Glencoe Wayfinding Signage Phase 2 improvements for a total cost not to exceed $107,705. And I'll ask our Director of Public Works, David Mao, and Jody Mariano of Tesca Associates to present. And I'll note that one of the reasons this is on the agenda is that this is a case in which we did not choose, I think, the lowest bid. So Dave and Jody, take it away.
Yes, good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. Just a brief overview. You've got the write-up in the packet, but I think it's worthwhile. This is an important investment, and it's the second phase, and so we just wanted to report back a few details for you tonight. As we've noted previously, recommendations were included in the downtown plan, which was approved by the board in 2016, to install wayfinding and identity signage in key locations around the downtown to make it easier for visitors to find their way to parking and other public locations of interest. A major design element of this plan was to unify and improve the visual nature of the many varied signs around the downtown, as well as remind users of the Green Bay Trail of downtown amenities that were available just a mere 2 blocks west of the trail. Next slide, please. The phase 1 installations were completed in 2020, and they include, one more slide, Jordan. They included new vehicular directional signs, public parking and bicycle directional signs, as well as 3 pole-mounted pedestrian informational kiosk sign boxes in the downtown. Response has been very positive from the public in our office, from each of those sign types that have gone into place. And then, so we moved to, and interestingly, the funding for this is from the balance remaining from our Tudor Court improvements, the bonding for the Tudor Court improvements, because of competitive pricing we had for that work. And so, but consistent with the same intent of the Tudor Court improvements is the wayfinding signage improvement project. The second phase of the improvements, wayfinding improvements, design work was initiated earlier this year. Next slide, please. And includes Village Hall destination signs, downtown gateway signs, village gateway signs, as well as a new event sign, community event sign at the corner of Green Bay and Park Avenue. So at this time, and joining us tonight is Jody Mariano, who's a principal with the firm of Tesca Associates. Jody is a professional landscape architect, and she has worked with the village from the onset of this project as the lead designer. Jody will provide a brief overview of the sign details and the proposed locations included in this second phase. Jody?
Great. Thank you, Dave, and good evening to the members of the board. Again, I'm Jody Mariano, Principal Landscape Architect with Tesca. We're so pleased to continue our work with staff on the development of the signage project. So just as Dave mentioned, phase 1 was implemented last year, and it was focused on those 3 sign types that you saw. Phase 2 looks at the areas beyond the downtown, and it makes visual and wayfinding connections between the main entry corridors and the downtown area. So many of the signs that you're going to see are replacement of existing signs, and some signs are new signs. So if we could go to the next slide. Thank you. These are elevations of the proposed signs. The branding is intended to reflect what was installed during phase 1. The masonry bases on a couple of those signs are designed to match the downtown streetscape, so it looks like it ties in and is unified. And so what I thought I could do is maybe just walk everyone conceptually through the signage as if you were entering Glencoe from the village limits and heading into the downtown. So starting with the pink sign on the top left, this is the Village Gateway Monument sign. It has stone bases. It would be located where existing signs are today at Lake Cook Road, at Dundee, Green Bay Road, Sheridan Road. After you enter that kind of welcomes you into the municipal boundary of Glencoe. After that, then you would continue on those corridors and you would be greeted with the sign just next to it on the right, the blue dot. That's the downtown directional sign. This is a pole mounted panel sign. It would be located on those very same corridors, just closer into the downtown. And then if you were to continue through, the next sign that you would be met with would be the orange dot at the bottom left. This is the downtown gateway sign. So this is closer into downtown. This would be Green Bay Road at the north and south, Vernon at the north and the south, Park Avenue towards the west, Hazel at the east of downtown. And so this is the one that says, you know, now you've entered into downtown. At that point, you're in downtown. And so now we've got a few other ancillary signs that work together. The purple signs, the purple dots, these are signs that note Village Hall and Public Works Destination, Wyman Green. These signs also have a decorative trellis feature that picks up on some of the Tudor styling and stick styling in other historic downtown buildings or buildings throughout the village. And then the other signs to mention, there is one bike sign, so the green dot at the top right. As Dave mentioned, there were 2 bike signs that were installed as part of the first phase. Because the bike path was under construction at the time, we elected to hold off on installing this one last sign. So that would be captured in this phase of work. And then last but certainly not least, the event sign, the one at the bottom right. This would be intended to replace the event sign that's there today. As you all know, that sign has 3 panels that are removable. They get replaced with painted or printed plywood panels. This just formalizes it, but it would be the same kind of element that there would be a aluminum sign backing and then features that are built into the sign so that village staff and local organizations could promote their upcoming events and activities with pre-printed sign panels. So I wanted to just kind of walk you through because I know the next couple of slides show some maps, but they might be a little bit small to read, but we can kind of look at them quickly. So on the next slide, this is the wayfinding signage plan as if you were coming in from the main corridors. So again, those pink signs, those village gateway signs that welcome you into the municipal boundary, those are the hot pink colors. And then once you get further in, then you're greeted with those blue dots, which would be the downtown directional sign panels. And then once you get past those, if you go to the next slide, please, then we're into downtown. And so those orange dots, those would be those trellis post signs that say you've entered downtown. And then those purple dots again would be the Village Hall signs. We've got that ancillary green dot, which is the bike sign. And then of course the event sign. So a lot of pieces, but we wanted to just walk you through and happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
One thing to add to Jody's presentation, I think it's worth noting both the gateway signs, the 5 entry points to the village, and the community event sign. It would be our intent to phase in some simple uplighting to those signs. They're currently not illuminated, but these would be very, very soft ground lighting to bring a little bit of a night feature to those, which I think is missing today.
Good point. Thank you, Dave.
Anyone have any questions about, thank you for a very excellent presentation about a project that we're getting ready to do.
Yeah, this is Pete. I personally don't feel that these signs are necessary, especially the downtown directional and downtown gateway. These are alternates in the bid. I would suggest we remove them. I feel like while they're very attractive, they look like they're good looking, solid signs. I just don't feel like we need this degree of signage to find downtown Glencoe. It seems simply unnecessary to me, and I feel like it clutters our right-of-way and sight lines. Even the sign that we have now, that must be the northeast corner, near Starbucks there with the map. I don't know. I don't feel like that's adding more value than the space, it disrupts that space in my experience. And I don't want to add more things in the right-of-way that aren't necessary, will become a continued maintenance item, and really have, in my opinion, while they're attractive signs, I like the design, but I just don't think it's necessary.
Thank you. If there's anyone else that feels the same way, now's we haven't signed up yet, so now's the time to speak up or not. I am comfortable with the plan, and this is something we started to look at when we had a resident who was complaining about a sign near her house. Anybody else?
So just so I understand.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, whoever. Are the bid alts, are those additional signs that we originally did not talk about, or?
No, we just consolidated them into a single phase. They were intended to be over 3 phases.
Yeah. Can we go back to just the map, just to see how many signs we're actually putting up?
So maybe just to help through, so the downtown, so that the 2 signs that that we were talking about was the downtown directionals, which are the light blue dots. Those are the signs which are the single post with the panel on it. And the downtown gateway would be on the second plan. The orange dots on the second plan, yeah. And what these maps don't show is these don't show all the signs that are out there today, just to be completely transparent. So yeah, there's several signs that are out there, which are the wayfinding signs. And those are the signs that direct folks to municipal destinations like Village Hall, Metra, Library, et cetera. And those for the most part are mounted to light poles. So we've been able to be efficient as possible to not clutter the streetscape with new poles. And so a lot of those signs are mounted to existing light poles, but these would all be freestanding.
And they're not replacing anything, they're new.
That's correct. The downtown directional signs and the downtown gateway signs would all be new.
Excuse me, the orange and light blue.
That's correct.
The orange on this one, the light blue on the other one.
That's correct.
But just a note to that, I think that if you go back to that prior slide, those locations of those orange signs are generally in right of way outside of the downtown sidewalk area or in existing landscape areas within that downtown streetscape. So they're not going to present any obstruction in the walkway. I mean, the visual is the visual, to Trustee Mulvaney's point, but they're not going to be physically an obstruction within the right of way.
I guess I'll just add a little bit, I just don't really see a lot of value in them. Heading on Vernon to downtown, you're gonna find the downtown. It's just, it's not hard to miss when you're there, and it's not so big or complicated that you can't navigate. You know, if somehow you miss it, it's not tough.
I guess I'd just add, and Trustee Mulvaney, your points are well taken, and I don't disagree with them. There is more to signage than direction. I think when a lot of this discussion took place with the downtown plan, which was an extensive community conversation, the idea behind some of this was also placemaking and delineation of the fact that the downtown very much is the heart of this community, both logistically, when you look at a map, and the way that it's relates to the neighborhoods that surround it and to the community at large. Which is why when these conversations were taking place and when the original phasing plan was anticipated and included in that downtown plan, these component parts were added into it. So that doesn't mean that they're absolutes. It doesn't mean that there is that they must be there, but there's a little bit of storytelling in the placement of these, and it doesn't delineate well on these maps. There are a series of piecemeal signs that exist throughout the community that would be removed as well as these signs go in. And I think that was another significant goal of this, was to unify and standardize signage. There's been signs added over the years in a variety of locations that have no relationship to one another other than the fact that they're a street sign. And this provided some unity to that. So I only add that to provide a little context, and happy to answer any other questions.
Let me say, so I wasn't participating when these, in the long process when the plans were drawn up, but we had a long planning process. The village has experts working for it. We've hired expert consultants, and I think this is attractive, and I am inclined to defer to the experts and the plan at this juncture, which I understand Trustee Mulvaney's point, but I think we've gone pretty far in a plan. We think it's a pretty good plan. We have experts advising us, and I would not be inclined to pull the plug now.
Just to further that, we included the bid tab, the detailed bid tab intentionally. There's obviously a wide range in numbers here. The low bidder had a misunderstanding of scope, and our conversations with them were recommending that low bid be rejected, and they were in agreement with that. But the lowest responsible bidder, Michael Signs out of Racine, the benefit we have here that we don't often have is they were awarded the first phase. So we've seen their work. The sign quality is excellent. The unit prices for the downtown gateway and downtown directional signs that are in question are extremely competitive and cost effective for the quality and the type of sign, as compared to our third and fourth bidder, who are excellent sign contractors. But we really feel like this is an opportunity that might not present itself again if we wanted to do it in its entirety. That's why we included those as alternates to see where our numbers were with our remaining available budget, and we have an opportunity to recommend award of the base bid plus both alternates to still come in well within the remaining bond fund dollars from the Tudor Court bond sale.
Question?
Thank you.
Question?
Anybody else? I mean, anybody else?
I have a question. A question.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the time horizon on installation for the signs?
That's a good question because we were a little later getting this out just for a variety of reasons. The completion date is extended into spring of 2022. And so, we're looking at work that'll be, we would hope, if it's awarded, it's in entirety, all this work would be completed before Memorial Day of 2022.
Okay, anybody else? If not, thank you for that discussion. Is there a motion to approve the project at not to exceed $107,705?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let's have a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
No.
trustee Underdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the last item on the agenda, other business, is there any other business that a member of the board would like to discuss? I'm not seeing or hearing any. Jordan, have we gotten any public comments?
No, we have not.
Okay. So the last item is closed session. We're going to have a closed session. What I'd ask for is a motion to move into closed session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, sections 2C21, review of closed session minutes, 2C6, consideration of sale or lease of village property, and 2C1, employment matters. Is there a motion for closed session for that?
Yes.
So moved.
I think,
Second.
is there a second in there?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, Phil, roll call.
Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Underdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, so we're going to a closed session.
It's
And I think
on the Zoom link that I sent out earlier this week.
Yeah, so we're all gonna look for it, and then I will come back to
Correct.
close out the
Right.
meeting. But for now, we're all gonna look for Steve Elrod's Zoom link. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Do you have the link, Howard?
I do.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to triple check.
I appreciate you looking for me. So let's see. So I have to Sorry for the delay.
Hi. Oh, no, that's okay.
I just had to look around my computer to find the damn link.
That's okay. Well, thank you for coming back. Do you have news for us?
Yes, we're done with the closed session and
Okay.
and I've been authorized to adjourn this meeting.
All right, excellent. It is 9:08 p.m. and I will stop the recording.